Yeah. Analytics off the chain, other channels not the same. Jake and Kyle, you know the name. Headliner Nation, we running the game. I'm a headliner.
What is going on, Headliner Nation? Jake, Fantasy Headliners. Hopefully everybody's doing well out there today, where we are now entering week 4 of fantasy football. And thank God week 3 is over, right? Just filled with injuries to some top players. A lot of studs underperformed there in week 3, but now we're moving forward, right? We're not going to sit back and dwell on what had happened was. We're going to look forward and try to find the guys best here for week 4. Now, we had ourselves a great week 3 overall when it comes to running backs, though. In last week's running back video, we had a total of 56 running backs we gave a start or sit designation to. Out of those 56, 40 of them were correct for an accuracy percentage of 71%. Some of the biggest misses, James Robinson. I'm actually okay with this miss because I'm hoping they really want to use him going forward now. Peyton Barber. Who the hell saw that coming, right? James Conner. I've had this dude as a start all year long. I finally tell people to sit him, and dude scores a couple touchdowns. Go figure. Some of the biggest hits, though, what about Saquon Barkley, right? Of course you're starting Saquon Barkley, but we talked about this in last week's show where we said, hey, the turnaround, the upstart to the season, it starts in week 3. It did. We saw it, and it could get even more going forward. CEH, a lot of people wanted to give up on CEH. We stayed strong. We told people to continue to start him. Had a good game from CEH. And then what about DeAndre Swift? Now, this has been a difficult backfield with him and Jamal Williams. We talked about it last week, how DeAndre Swift seems to be the guy who's going to be involved the most in the passing game, and that gives us that safer floor because we expect Detroit to be losing a lot. Well, that game was pretty close, but they still utilized DeAndre Swift. 3 good hits for us here in week 3. Before we get into all the matches, we got to talk about our giveaway through Prize Picks. It's the last week. It's not even a full week. You got to get in on it right now. All you need to do is head over to prizepicks.com or download the app. Create a new account using the referral code HEADLINERS. When you do that, you make your initial $20 deposit. They'll match your deposit all the way up to $100. Plus, you get entered into this giveaway where we're giving away an autographed Justin Jefferson jersey, a Manscaped Perfect Package 4.0, and a Trevor Lawrence rookie card, a combined value of over $250. Plus, you get to hop on Prize Picks with us here all season long, make some bets, and hopefully walk away with a little bit of extra money. But now it's time to dive into week 4 of fantasy football. And we're going to kick it off Thursday night with the Jacksonville Jaguars and Cincinnati Bengals. I'm just so excited, right? I don't know if I should start high-fiving people virtually or thrusting something. I don't know what I should be doing, but I'm pumped up because we're starting to see some volume going the way of James Robinson. Volume that we thought he would be seeing when they lost Travis Etienne here early this offseason. But, coming into week 3, he hadn't had a game with more than 14 touches. Then week 3 happened, and he gets 21 total touches with 6 glorious receptions. Now, where did the Cincinnati defense struggle last week? Receiving out of the backfield. Don't forget, Najee Harris had 19 targets and 14 receptions against this defense. Can J-Rob just get a little bit? Can J-Rob get a piece of that? I hope so, because we started to see Carlos Hyde faded out, right? No targets for him in week 3. Perfect. We also continue to see Trevor Lawrence interceptions, turnovers, fumbles, whatever it may be. How do you take some of that pressure off of a rookie quarterback that has got a lot of turnover issues? You shrink the field. You simplify the game plan. You run the ball, and you rely more on screen passes, on short crossing routes. That's all going to benefit James Robinson going forward. We know Cincinnati's going to come out, put up some points on the board against this defense, right? They're going to cause Jacksonville to have to throw it. That may limit some of the rushing upside for James Robinson, but it could benefit him in the passing game and raise that ceiling, making him a little bit safer. I'm going to start James Robinson this week. He's not going to be super high in my rankings. He's probably going to be right around that 20 mark or so because Urban Meyer has burned us before when we thought we had this backfield figured out. So now, going to exercise a little bit more caution, but still starting James Robinson. As for Cincinnati, you're going to start Joe Mixon, right? Going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars, who allow almost 30 fantasy points per game on the ground to running backs. Plus, Joe Mixon right now, number 2 in the NFL in rushing. In fact, I'm going to head over to Prize Picks right now. I'm looking up Joe Mixon. Right now in receiving yards for Joe Mixon, his over-under is set at 16.5 yards. I'm very confident that we can see Joe Mixon eclipse 16.5 receiving yards against the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I'm going to smash the over on Prize Picks there on Joe Mixon. He hasn't had a game in which he's had less than 19 touches this season. And we're starting to see Chris Evans sprinkled in, and we're getting questions about Chris Evans. Don't worry. Joe Mixon is still the bell cow running back in this offense. At times, he's going to be pulled off to get a drink. Dude gets tired from running a lot, right? So that's what Chris Evans is out there doing. I'm not worried about him taking a huge workload away from Joe Mixon, and he's going to remain a start for me here this week. Which takes us on to Sunday football, the Washington football team and Atlanta Falcons. And Antonio Gibson showed you why you should never sit him just this past week, right? He's too explosive. Now, his usage sucks. A couple weeks ago, I had to look, directly into this camera and talk specifically to the soul of Bill Belichick. I think it's time that I do it now to Ron Rivera. Ron, use Antonio Gibson more. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, Ron. Do more. The guy needs more touches. He only had one reception this last week. You know what he did with that, Ron? He took it 73 yards to the house. Ron, give him more receptions. Give him more passing work because this guy is super explosive. Now, the game was out of hand. I know that's probably why he didn't get very many touches, on the ground out of the backfield, Ron. But get him more passing work, Ron. This kid can be absolutely electric. Anyway. Thanks for listening, Ron. Like I said, though, the kid just finds the end zone. He's done it since his rookie year just last year, but now he gets a better matchup this week, going up against the Atlanta Falcons, who allow right around 22 fantasy points per game to opposing running back. Now, McKissick came out this past week and basically showed that week 2 wasn't a fluke, but it was what we said it was, right? It was kind of right place, right time in week 2. Wasn't anything to be looking forward to because if they were trailing like they were this past week and they still weren't utilizing J.D. McKissick that much, he only had 2 targets. We know that was kind of just a fluke type game. I'm firing up Antonio Gibson against the Atlanta Falcons. As for Atlanta, I guess Cordero Patterson is now a thing. I don't get it. I don't understand it. This offense can't find a way to get Calvin Ridley and Kyle Pitts the ball, but they can figure out how to get Cordero Patterson the ball, who's been in the league for like a decade and bounced around everywhere and never really found a spot. Apparently, he's found that spot because he's getting right around 7 carries, 7 receptions a game over the last 2 weeks. He's got a safe floor due to that passing work. They're very creative with him, and that's why it really puzzles me because how can you be so creative with him, but not with the other best players on your team? Now, the Washington football team defense been somewhat of a disappointment to start the year, especially that front 7. They're allowing 20 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. In my opinion, Mike Davis still getting the bulk of the work on the ground, but still too risky because he's so touchdown dependent and he's not getting the touchdowns in Atlanta. They're going the way of Cordero Patterson. So in my opinion, I'll start Patterson over Mike Davis here in week 4. Which takes us over to Houston and Buffalo, and to be completely honest, there are a few backfields in the NFL that I enjoy talking about less than Houston and Buffalo. I mean, Houston, to start off with, just a total cluster. You know what I'm talking about. I mean, can they keep Buffalo close in this game to utilize anybody on the ground? Probably not. You got David Johnson, Phillip Lindsay, and Mark Ingram. Oh, yeah, and now they're even sprinkling in Rex Burkhead. No, I just don't understand. So many people got excited week 1 with Mark Ingram's usage. Haven't seen that since, really, right? So I'm not excited about anybody in this backfield, especially the fact that they're facing off against the Buffalo Bills, one of the best defenses here to start the season in the NFL. When it comes to the backfield of the Houston Texans, I got 2 words for you when it comes to saying, hey, should I start one of these guys? Hell no, you should not. Now, as for Buffalo, they've been productive, right? I mean, they're definitely producing on a weekly basis. But who? Is it Zach Moss? Is it Devin Singletary? At times, they've both looked pretty good, and at times, they've both looked pretty bad. Now, as of right now, it seems like Zach Moss is kind of set up to be the PPR guy, the goal line guy in this offense. That's what I'm looking for because they throw it a lot in Buffalo, and they have a lot of scoring opportunities. Now, Houston allows over 30 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. One of these guys is going to have a great game. Who is it going to be? If I had to gamble on one of them, I'm going Zach Moss this week just due to the fact that he does get those goal line opportunities and he's more involved in the passing game. Singletary gets more on the ground, but like I said, I'm trying to get those touchdowns because neither one of these guys are overly relied upon in their offense. They're kind of an afterthought, but the offense is so good that they succeed. So really difficult to pick out this backfield. I'm going with Zach Moss here for week 4, though, of fantasy football. Now on to Detroit and Chicago, and 2 things off the top here for this matchup. First thing, Detroit, kudos to you for using DeAndre Swift the correct way. We had a lot of question marks surrounding this offense, this running game coming into the season. Were they going to get too cute and utilize Jamal Williams? Were they going to sign another free agent? What was going to go on in this backfield? Well, through the first couple weeks, they're starting to utilize DeAndre Swift pretty well, and we absolutely love that. Number 2 in this matchup, Matt Nagy still sucks and is basically like Adam Gase at this point. But back to Detroit. Apparently, they're going to continue this usage to DeAndre Swift, which is absolutely great. What do I wish he'd get more volume on the ground? Yeah, a little bit, but his involvement in the passing game is great, and it's enough to make him a weekly start due to that high volume, because you know Detroit's going to be losing almost on a weekly basis. When you're losing in the NFL, do you run the ball? No, you throw the ball. When you throw the ball, who do you throw it to in Detroit? You throw it to DeAndre Swift. And that's why this guy is continuing to have a great floor and a high ceiling on a weekly basis. They're not getting too cute. We're starting to see less and less Jamal Williams, which I like Jamal Williams, but I mean, they're going the way that they should with DeAndre Swift. He's going to be a start for me here going up against Chicago in this game. Now, on the Chicago side of things, David Montgomery is just being killed by this coaching staff, along with everybody else, right? You can say Justin Fields was thrown to the Wolves. You can say that Allen Robinson's being set up to fail. Same with Darnell Mooney. It just doesn't look good. They don't look like the same team that we saw second half of 2020. It's not even close. So it's really hard to trust these guys, right? But Detroit is one of the worst run defenses in the NFL. Even though they shut out the Baltimore Ravens for the most part last week, that was really the game plan going in. There's more weapons here for Chicago. Do they know how to use them? Doesn't seem so, right? But Detroit is still allowing over 30 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs, and you can't afford to sit David Montgomery. Is he going to be another one of these guys that's up inside my top 10, my top 15? Borderline top 15, because I'm not overly excited just due to Matt Nagy sucking, but he's still somebody that I want to start here on a weekly basis. Over to Carolina, who's heading out to Dallas here this weekend, and who would have thought that two of the best defensive teams early on in 2021 would be the Carolina Panthers and the Dallas Cowboys. They're both ranked top 5 against opposing running backs. They both allow under 10 fantasy points a game to opposing running backs. Now, for Carolina, we know there's no Christian McCaffrey for a couple weeks, so now we have a mixture of Chuba Hubbard and Royce Freeman. Hubbard going to be the lead guy here in this backfield, but to be honest, I don't love this matchup for them. I can see a whole lot of DJ Moore. I can see a little bit more maybe Robbie Anderson, maybe some more Terrace Marshall this week, but I am just not seeing it for Chuba Hubbard. They're going to have so much volume. Dallas at home plays more confident. That rush, that pass rush, that defensive front is looking great for the Dallas Cowboys. Plus, Diggs on the outside is shutting wide receivers down. I don't love this matchup at all for the running backs. Honestly, I know you probably just spent a high waiver claim on Chuba Hubbard, but a matchup against Dallas in Dallas doesn't excite me too much. Both of these guys, they're going to be a sit for me here this week. Now, for Dallas, I heard a lot of people over the last few weeks, not only on YouTube, but on Twitter and social media saying, man, Zeke is washed. Zeke sucks. Tony Pollard is the better guy. After watching the game this past week, do you still think that Zeke is washed? Because I don't think so. I've been saying all along that this guy is not washed. He's got plenty left in the tank, and he looked great against Philadelphia. He kind of looked like old school Zeke. Oh, he got shifty. He was running north and south. He was running hard. That's what we want to see out of Ezekiel Elliott. You can't ever sit this guy, right? But going up against Carolina is risky, right? Because Carolina's defense is a huge surprise for people here in 2021. Now, you can't sit Zeke. He's going to be somebody that's going to be in your lineup just due to the touchdown upside alone. Plus, he's still getting the volume. Tony Pollard, on the other hand, a little bit more risky. But I will still flex Tony Pollard this week, and this is why. I'm not super confident that they're going to not have to utilize more of the passing game against the Carolina Panthers. We saw, Amari Cooper basically disappear. He's banged up. They don't have Michael Gallup. They relied heavily on their tight ends, but Tony Pollard needs to be somebody in a weekly, scheme that is more utilized in the passing game. They didn't really have to this past week because they got out to an early lead against Philadelphia and were never really challenged and had to. That's why they ran Zeke so much. But in this game, which could stay close, could be more of a defensive matchup, they're going to be looking for those big plays. So for Zeke and Pollard, they're both going to find themselves in the start column. On Indianapolis and Miami, two teams with two running backs that are just on the verge of a big game. I can feel it deep down inside. You ever just feel it in your bones? That's how I feel with these two guys right now. And we've seen this before in the past in Indianapolis with Jonathan Taylor, right? A slow start. Nyheim Hines getting inconsistent usage, sometimes more than Jonathan Taylor, and we didn't understand why. And then all of a sudden the lid just broke off and Jonathan Taylor exploded. That happened just last year. A lot of the same is happening this year. Is it by design? If it is, it's a stupid design, but it could be something where they just start off a little bit slower utilizing Jonathan Taylor. I don't understand it. It makes no sense, but the volume is definitely lower now than it was to end 2020, which is cause for concern. Losing Quentin Nelson on the offensive line, that sucks. I'm hearing word of possible a high ankle sprain. That's something to pay close attention to. That's a big loss right there on the offensive line. But he's got a great opportunity to bounce back this week going up against the Miami Dolphins, who allow over 35 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs, one of the worst in the NFL when it comes to that. Now, we've seen Nyheim Hines kind of be up and down, inconsistent on the season. And for that reason, I just don't have that safe feeling on the inside where I have to start him every single week. If you're in a deep league, a 14, 16 team PPR, maybe you start 2, 3, 4, 5 flexes, whatever it may be, then yeah, Nyheim Hines becomes an option. But in standard, 10-team, 12-team leagues, even if it's up to half PPR, I'm not overly excited to start Nyheim Hines here this week. I'm going to continue to stay committed to Jonathan Taylor, though. The big game is coming. You don't want it to happen on your bench. Now, for Miami, I can say a lot of the same things for Myles Gaskin. Last week, 16 touches. That's the most he's had in a game so far this year, and he's averaged over 5 yards per carry on the season. Plus, averaging right around 5 targets a game as well. Now, Indianapolis, they were supposed to be pretty tough against the run, but they really haven't been. They're allowing right around 25 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs as well. Now, last week we saw Malcolm Brown get a touchdown, and it pisses us off because we really wanted that to be Myles Gaskin, right? But it wasn't an automatic, hey, we're going to give it to him on the goal line. Malcolm Brown made a play. He broke off a big run, got in the end zone. It happens. Hate to see it, but at least they're not giving away goal line work or anything like that away from Myles Gaskin. He's still going to remain a start for me here this week. I'm looking for him to bounce back against the Indianapolis Colts in a game in which we could see both these guys, Jonathan Taylor and Myles Gaskin, break out just a little bit. On to Cleveland and Minnesota, and really no questions here, right? Well, other than health questions surrounding Dalvin Cook. If Dalvin Cook plays, he's in your starting lineup, regardless. Like, you can't ever sit Dalvin Cook. We absolutely know that. That's something we really need to pay attention to, though, throughout the week and the practice reports. If for any reason Dalvin Cook sits once again this week, then yes, I will fire up Alexander Mattison, even though it's a very tough matchup going up against the Cleveland Browns. Why would I still start him? Well, last week, they gave Alexander Mattison 32 touches. 32 touches. Now, Cleveland, like I said, is a difficult matchup. Top 5 in the NFL, allowing only right around 10 fantasy points per game. But if you have a running back on your roster that's capable of 32 touches a week, you put him in your lineup. You roll the dice regardless, because of that amount of volume, you're hoping for one big play. You're hoping for 2 goal line carries. Whatever it may be, you can't sit somebody who can get 32 touches in a game. So really pay close attention. If it's Dalvin, he's obvious. If Dalvin sits, then I'm going to go with Alexander Mattison. If Dalvin plays and they said, hey, he's going to be somewhat limited, I'm not using Alexander Mattison as long as Dalvin Cook is active. For Cleveland, you just don't sit Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, like, ever. They are so committed to them in this backfield that they can both have huge games. They can both win you your matchup. I've had people leave some comments before say, are we worried about Nick Chubb? No. The guy's like, what, 3rd in the NFL in rushing? No, he's doing just fine. Just because he doesn't get a touchdown every single game doesn't mean he's struggling. We still love Nick Chubb. Kareem Hunt kind of showing his ceiling here this past week. We talked about that, though, right? Just in the show last week, how with the injuries to a Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham just coming back off of a major injury, they're going to have to utilize some more pass-catching weapons out of the backfield, a la Kareem Hunt. Well, we kind of saw that this past weekend. It worked out great, and he helped a lot of people in their matchups. Don't get too cute here with the Cleveland Browns backfield. You start both of them. That'll take us to the Giants and Saints. And we sat on this show just last week and said, hey, Saquon Barkley is about to be, quote unquote, unleashed, right? They're going to go ahead and give him a full workload starting week 3. Don't panic sell Saquon Barkley after the first 2 weeks of the season. And then he basically did. It wasn't a huge game, but it was a very welcome game for all the Saquon Barkley owners out there. But it could be getting even better, because now they're totally banged up in New York. Kenny G was already limited coming into the game, and then they lost Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton to hamstring injuries. We've seen Evan Ingram drop the ball and fumble it. This is just opening up more and more opportunities for Saquon Barkley to go out there and see a lot of volume, get a lot more pass work. Now, the Saints, they're pretty solid against the run. They're a top 10 run defense, so this is not an easy matchup whatsoever. But with Barkley being a full go in more of a bell cow role, because there's nobody else sharing working with him in the backfield this past week, I don't expect it going forward, you automatically start Saquon Barkley once again. Now, for New Orleans, the same can be said for Alvin Kamara. But usually we're reliant on the pass work for Alvin Kamara. This past week, though, 24 carries on the ground for Alvin Kamara. That is huge. I don't know if I like that much on a weekly basis because I don't want this guy hurt, but to see that type of volume in an offense that isn't exactly as explosive, you got to get it to the guys that can make the big plays happen, like Alvin Kamara. They're doing that. I like that commitment to him. Plus, the Giants allow right around 20 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. So yeah, you're not ever going to sit Alvin Kamara anyway. Now move over to Tennessee and the New York Jets, 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 looking like absolute hot garbage right now. But anyway, talk about two different ends of the spectrum, right? On one side, you have King Henry. I mean, do you remember all the people talking this offseason about, oh, Derrick Henry is going to regress? There's no way he can even remotely come close to what he did last year. Right now, dude is on pace for 2,000 yards and 17 touchdowns. Just throwing that out there. Whatever. He gets the Jets this week, and the Jets allow over 30 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. This is a smash matchup. You are too, starting Derrick Henry. On the other side, not so much, right? You got Michael Carter, who's starting to look better each and every week, but this guy just can't get a positive game script to really get any volume, and that's really limited in almost anything. He doesn't have a floor. His ceiling is like super capped. But they're still sprinkling in Ty Johnson as well. The entire offense just looks bad. They cannot, for the life of themselves, stop hurting themselves with turnovers. Zach Wilson, I think, has, at last count, like 336 interceptions or turnovers in the past 3 weeks. Some ridiculous number. Anyway, it's not a bad matchup for them going up against the Tennessee Titans, but honestly, there's not enough here for me to want to start any of these guys in New York. On to the Chiefs and Eagles now, and there is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. What's up, Clyde? Keep the faith, people. We talked about this last week as well. Coming off of that bad fumble, I expected them to give him volume to try to boost his confidence. Come out and he gets the most touches he's had in the game so far this year. But it was his first 100-yard game since week 6 of the 2020 NFL season. But there's still room to raise that ceiling. Kansas City needs playmakers, which sounds crazy to say, right? But we mentioned this in the show earlier this week where they need somebody opposite of Tyreek Hill. Defenses are keying in on Tyreek Hill and they're just taking him away, and so much of the offense went through Tyreek Hill that they're looking a little bit lost at times, and they're spreading the ball around so much, trying to find who can be that other guy outside of Hill and Kelsey. It looks like it could be CEH. Now, the sign of Josh Gordon, what does that do? I don't think Josh Gordon does a whole lot. If he can come out, though, and make a good catch and draw some defensive attention away, that's only going to help this offense as a whole. I'm still going to roll out CEH this week, even though Philadelphia was pretty solid against the run until this past week where they were shredded by Zeke Elliott. So I'm going to throw out Clyde Edwards-Helaire and hope for more checkdowns, and so he can be a start for us here with a safer floor due to that PPR work. Now, for Philadelphia, could you imagine what Miles Sanders could do with 20 touches a game? Could you imagine it? This guy is great with the ball in his hands. The problem is he's just not getting the volume, and Jalen Hurts is calling his own numbers so much, it's just limiting the amount of volume he could even get. Now, Kansas City, they allow over 30 fantasy points per game on the ground to running backs. One of the worst in the leagues, but it's just more risky with Miles Sanders, right? I'm going to go ahead and start him once again because of the efficiency. This guy only had like 2 carries last week, but had 26 yards. He is definitely electric. They have to find a way to get him the ball more out of this backfield. This could be a potential shootout where they have to rely a little bit more on Miles Sanders and that big play ability, because honestly, they're not getting it from Rager and they're not getting it from Devontae Smith. So why not try Miles Sanders this week? Another one of those guys. He's going to be a start, but not super high in the rankings just due to the risk that's associated with him. On to Arizona and the Los Angeles Rams, and oh boy, this one could be exciting, right? A divisional matchup between two teams who are both 3-0, high-powered offenses. Now, for the Rams, with Darrell Henderson banged up, how much do they really want to utilize Sony Michel on the ground? These are two high, heavy passing offenses between both of these teams. In my opinion, this just screams running back nightmare who are going to be, goal line touchdown dependent. And if they don't get it, they're going to absolutely kill your fantasy team. James Conner requires a lead to really be efficient, right? That's really hard to just go into a game against the Los Angeles Rams and expect that. Chase Edmonds, he's getting targets, but none of them are big plays. They're short checkdowns that really aren't going anywhere. Edmonds is still going to be slightly safer, especially in PPR scoring, because he is getting that work. He is getting that volume right around 5-6 receptions a game or so. So I will go ahead and start Chase Edmonds in a game in which they're going to have to throw the ball against the Rams, plus that tough defensive front could be difficult for James Conner to find any running lanes. So I'm going to sit Conner, start Chase Edmonds. For the Rams, though, we're still unsure about Darrell Henderson, like we mentioned a little bit earlier. Does he play? They want to be cautious with him. And why would they not just let him fully heal and continue to ride Sony Michel? That's what I believe happens. Now, we need to pay close attention to the practice reports here this week. If Darrell Henderson plays, I'm not starting probably either one of these guys because it's going to be really close to a 50-50 split, especially if Darrell Henderson comes in there limited all throughout the week and then ends up playing. It's just going to be a mess. If Darrell Henderson is ruled out, I will start Sony Michel against the Arizona Cardinals just due to the volume he could see alone, plus the touchdown upside, going up against a team in Arizona who's been kind of hit and miss against opposing running backs. So pay close attention to the practice reports. If I'm being honest, I think what really clarifies this backfield is Darrell Henderson sitting this week and we relying on Sony Michel. But we need to wait and see on this one to see if they even want to risk throwing him out there against the Cardinals here this week. Which takes us to the other two teams in the NFC West, the Seattle Seahawks and San Francisco 49ers. Now, you know this San Francisco backfield is going to cause anger everywhere. Does Elijah Mitchell return this week? What about the usage of Kyle Juszczyk? The guy had 9 touches this past week. Now, Sermon saved his day with a touchdown from the 1-yard line, but he did not look great overall for the game. Only averaged 3.1 yards per carry, had 2 receptions for only 3 total yards. Now, Seattle allows a crap ton of points to opposing running backs. I'm talking almost 40 points a game to opposing running backs. But who is it going to be? Honestly, if Trey Sermon is the only active running back, then yeah, I'll throw him out there against Seattle. But if we get the return of Elijah Mitchell, I'm gonna worry about it because we sprinkle in Kyle Juszczyk and there's just not enough opportunities there for me to want to rely on Trey Sermon. He's somebody who's going to be a project. We talked about this all offseason to the point where he's not going to be somebody that comes in and just sets the league on fire. He's going to be a slow burn. By mid-season, second half of the year, when he really starts to catch pace with this offense, then yes, he could definitely turn it up and start producing more fantasy points. But we're cautious here to start the season. We really need to pay attention and see who is actually active in this backfield heading in to week 4 before we make any solid decisions. As of right now, I'll have Sermon as a start, expecting Elijah Mitchell to sit. Only thing, though, for Seattle is Chris Carson, right? We're not considering anybody else in this backfield. He's averaging right around 15 touches a game, but really the last 2 games have been saved by touchdowns, which is fine. I mean, he's getting the touchdown opportunities, which is a great thing. We're starting to see some passing work go the way of Travis Homer, but that's okay. Well, we're still seeing the majority of the usage going towards Chris Carson. He's still involved in the passing game. His volume is just not what it used to be in years past. The reason for that, they're trying to keep the guy healthy. He struggled with injuries for years. If they go out there and they give him 20, 25 touches a game, sure, he'll look great for 3 or 4 weeks, and then he'll miss the next 3 or 4 weeks hurt. So they're really trying to limit his touches to make sure he's out there the entire season. He's the guy with the touchdown upside, and he's the guy I'm starting in Seattle. So now we go over to the Baltimore Ravens, Denver Broncos, and what happened to the Baltimore running game in week 3. Their running backs totaled 4 fantasy points combined against Detroit. What? That just makes no sense. Now, it's already tough because we don't know what's going on in this backfield, right? Each and every week, is it Tyson Williams, is it Latavius Murray, now is Devonta Freeman getting opportunities? But now, on top of all of that, they get a matchup going up against the Denver Broncos, who are arguably one of the best run defenses in all of the NFL, allowing less than 10 fantasy points per game. Who do you choose? Who gets the goal line opportunities? Right now, it really seems to be Latavius Murray. In my opinion, the best back in this backfield is Tyson Williams, but they are obviously not overly committed to making sure he gets the bulk of the volume. Latavius Murray is still out touching him. So that's what really worries me here. If I had to put my finger on one of these guys for this week, it's Latavius Murray, but that's only for the touchdown upside. He's not as reliant on big plays because when they get inside the 5, he's more than likely going to be the guy trying to pound it into the end zone, and that's why I'm going Latavius Murray here this week, even though I like Tyson Williams as a running back a lot better. For Denver, both Gordon and Williams are producing, and they're splitting touches at almost a 50-50 split. Gordon's getting more carries, Javonte Williams more action in the passing game. Baltimore has shown to be a little bit more vulnerable through the air, though, especially out of the backfield. So in this game, I don't know if I can trust the inefficiencies of Melvin Gordon, because at times it takes him a lot of volume to get anything really worth something. So I'm going with Javonte Williams, who seems to be the more explosive running back overall in this offense when you combine on the ground and through the air. Can he recover from that fumble and get more confidence? Because he's another one of these guys. like Trey Sermon. As the season progresses, we expect more and more and more going the way of Javonte Williams, because this kid is absolutely electric. Teddy Bridgewater compared him to a young Alvin Kamara. He's had reports in the past of being like a diet version of Nick Chubb. The guy is a great overall running back, and as the season progresses, you're going to start seeing that more and more. So this week, I'm going with Javonte Williams in hopes that they have to rely a little bit more on the passing game with him and not so much on the ground game with Melvin Gordon. Which takes us to Pittsburgh and Green Bay, my Manscaped matchup of the week. That's right. Head over to manscaped.com after this show is over. Get yourself something nice, fellas, and use the promo code HEADLINERS at checkout. When you do that, we're going to get you 20% off your order and free shipping. There's so much more there than just ball trimmers, fellas. Head over there, check it out, and find yourself something nice to add to your travel bag. But as far as the running backs in this game, it doesn't get much better of a matchup than Najee Harris and Aaron Jones, especially with Najee Harris coming off a game in which he saw 19 targets out there. 19? Are you kidding me? He turned it into 14 receptions. Now we know Deontay Johnson banged up, Juju banged up, Claypool banged up, Big Ben tripping over his own 2 feet back there in the backfield. I'm expecting a lot of Najee on a weekly basis, not just with checkdowns, but on the ground as well. He's definitely somebody who I'm not overly excited about the inefficiencies on the ground, but we knew that was going to be a thing coming into the season with the Steelers' offensive line. But this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to head over to Prize Picks right now. I'm going to pull up Najee Harris, and I'm going to go the over, because as of right now, they have him sitting at 63.5 rushing yards. I do believe he doesn't have a huge game, but that he does cross that threshold. I'm going to smash the over on Prize Picks for Najee Harris here this week, and he's going to be a start. Same thing can be said for Aaron Jones. This guy is just everywhere right now, on the ground, through the air. He has 5 touchdowns through 3 weeks, 20 plus touches a week, touchdown upside. This guy is matchup proof. Yeah, sure, it's a difficult matchup going up against Pittsburgh, but they find ways to get Aaron Jones the ball, and they're starting to get more and more confident in Green Bay, and all that means is more touchdowns, which is a lot more Aaron Jones. Of course, he's going to be a start for me here in week 4. Then we get the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, New England Patriots, and I guess we can say, well, there's one less running back to worry about in the backfield for Tampa Bay, right? Gio Bernard, he's hurt, but he'd been a big part of this passing game out of the backfield. He had 10 targets just last week. We've seen Rojo struggle to even get on the field, and Leonard Fournette is more than likely going to be the guy that absorbs a lot of that passing work because Ronald Jones can't catch consistently, and that's a problem. So I'm looking for Leonard Fournette to get those added touches. Plus, I expect this to be a heavy pass game. Why? Tom Brady's going back to Foxborough. Do you think that they're going to want to just like turn around and run the whole game? They don't run regardless. No, they're throwing the ball a lot, and they want to put up a big number against the New England Patriots with Tom Brady back in town. I really believe this benefits Leonard Fournette the most out of this backfield, so he's going to be the guy I start for Tampa Bay this week. For New England, I love Damian Harris a lot. I don't love the matchup going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We know there's no more James White. He is hurt, but that's not something that's really going to translate over to Damian Harris's game. He's not going to absorb all that passing work. They're going to utilize other running backs for that. I'm really looking for the Tampa Bay team to come out here motivated and try to get out to an early lead, and that worries me that it's not going to allow New England the opportunity to sit back and run the ball with Damian Harris. Hate to do it, but I'm going to sit Damian Harris here in week 4. Which takes us to Monday Night Football, Las Vegas Raiders, Los Angeles Chargers. And is this the week that Josh Jacobs returns? Gruden sounds like he wants to get him back on the field this week, but this game being on Monday Night Football sucks because I would not be surprised if the Raiders string us along all week long and he goes into the weekend as a questionable tag. That is a problem because we're coming off a game in which Peyton Barber just looked really, really good. Does that mean that they take it easy with Josh Jacobs and rely one more week on Peyton Barber? Could be. But if you don't have that option on your bench, I would not want to go into Monday reliant on Josh Jacobs, because what happens if last minute before the game he's a scratch or he's so limited that they utilize Peyton Barber more? That is something to definitely pay attention to. Not a bad matchup. The Chargers allow right around 20 fantasy points per game, but until we get more clarity in this backfield, as of right now, I got to sit all of these guys. Now, if Josh Jacobs comes out this week and is 100% healthy by the end of the weekend, going into the weekend, hey, Josh Jacobs, full go, then yes, I will start him. If he's not, I'm probably going to avoid this entire backfield until we get a little bit more clarity. For the Los Angeles Chargers, this is all about Austin Eckler, right? He's really the only one to consider. And it's great to see another week of targets in the backfield for this guy. He's had 15 targets on the season. He's caught in all 15 of them. Plus, he's the guy getting the goal line work, averaging right around 5.5 yards per carry on the ground. Now, his pass work needs to keep up against that Las Vegas pass rush. That's no joke there for the Raiders. But the way they utilize Eckler in this offense and how this offense is really starting to move the ball more and more down the field with the likes of Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, there's no way you're sitting Austin Eckler. He's for sure in the start column here in week 4. All right, those are my starts and sits for the running back position here, week 4 fantasy football. Hopefully I was able to clarify a few questions for you, and if not, don't worry, we have ranking shows that come out Thursday morning to help solidify any other questions that you may have. But before we get out of here, one last reminder here today. Don't miss out on the giveaway for Prize Picks. Head over to Prize Picks right now, create that new account, make that initial deposit, and use the referral code HEADLINERS when you do so. We'll match your deposit up to $100, and then you'll be entered into the giveaway that's valued at over $250 total of a Justin Jefferson signed jersey, the Manscaped package, and a Trevor Lawrence rookie card. Looking forward to giving that away in the end of September, which is right around the corner. We're running out of time. I can't believe September is almost over, but get in on it before it is too late. But hopefully you guys have a great rest of your day. Do me a favor, if you could hit that like button and consider subscribing to the channel if you have not already. We would love to be able to help you out all year long when it comes to things fantasy football and NFL news. So have a great rest of your day, a great week, and we'll talk to you later.